Good morning, everyone. Thanks for everyone for being here today in the second part of our 12 sector collaboration series. This month we covered schools. Today's focus is on the youth sector. So thank you for everyone for coming today. And a special thanks to our shared experience speakers, Terry, Dina, and Cassie, who are going to be lending their voice to the youth sector today for all of us. Just a brief introduction. I'm Jen Jacobson. I'm with T-Task, and I'll be moderating today's event. Also on the call from T-Task helping me today will be Lisa Mason. She's going to help me moderate today. Ken Ploward will be helping us on the technology end. And Shay Montemuro will be monitoring our chat box. Hi, Shay. Thanks, everyone, for helping me today. Just a few housekeeping notes before we get started, everyone. If everyone could just remember to keep yourselves muted just so we don't have any background noise or echoing and everyone can hear, that would be super helpful unless you're sharing or asking some questions. Also, we do have the chat box available, so certainly we'll be stopping along the way today to lend everyone an opportunity to ask any questions they may have. But in the interim, before we get to those points, if you have any comments or thoughts or questions, feel free to use the chat box and we'll check in with Shay to get to those. Lastly, we will be following up at the end of today's presentation for you all and emailing you the full slide deck. So by all means, feel free to take notes if you want, but you don't need to be trying to copy down all the text on the slides because we'll make that available to you at the end. And last but not least, for those who can't join us today, we'll be recording and posting this so that they can hear and listen what we've gone through in terms of the youth sector today as well. So just so everyone's aware of that. And with that, we're going to jump right in. I'm going to be screen sharing for a lot of this, so I'll stop along the way, but just to follow along, we'll have our presentation, so I'm going to screen share. And here we go. So 12 sector collaboration series by T-Task. Today's focus is on the youth sector. Just an overview of how today will run. Each of our sector series follows a similar model in terms of what we're hoping for you all to learn and get out of it. But we were going to walk through the youth sector within the SPF model. We're going to gain knowledge of the different levels of sector involvement and engagement, learn from a shared experience through coalition speakers, identify ways to engage with the sector, talk about some barriers we might all be experiencing or have experienced in the past and how to engage in the youth sector and how we've been able to overcome them, and provide you with several tools around the 12 sectors as we use them within commonly used evidence-based strategies. And of course, time for Q&A and discussion as well. Oops, sorry. Okay, so just really briefly, many of us are very familiar with the strategic prevention framework, but there are some people on the call today that might not be as familiar. So just a brief overview of the SPF. This is really from SAMHSA's guide to the SPF model, and it's a 5-step process with 2 principles that offer prevention planners a comprehensive approach to understanding and addressing substance misuse and related behavioral problems facing our state and communities. So the first step really is assessment, where we're identifying our local prevention needs using data. Capacity is building those local resources and readiness to address our prevention needs. Planning is really finding out what works to address the prevention needs and how we're going to do that in our community or within our organization. Implementing is delivering the evidence-based programs and practices, how we're moving into action. It's really our action plan. And evaluation is examining the process and the outcomes of what we've done and were we successful and what are some of the areas we might need to continue to work on. And just undergirding the SPF are 2 principles. The first is cultural competence, which is really the ability of an organization to or individual to understand and interact effectively with people who have different values or lifestyles and traditions based on their distinctive heritage. And sustainability is really looking at the long game, to the long term in the process of building an adaptive and effective system that achieves and maintains desired long-term results. So that's really our long-term plan. So specifically getting into the youth sector now, SAMHSA really defines that as working with persons under the years of 18 years old, sorry. I know some of us in the coalition work and our coordinators, just some of the ways that coalition coordinators or organizations access youth under 18 years of age are reaching out to our youth serving organizations in our community, working with school-based youth groups that may be at school, having a coalition youth committee. A lot of our coalitions have youth committees that they work with youth in their communities on, reaching out to faith-based groups, faith and nurture in their community, and any others that we may not have been identified here. But for the first time, we're going to try to get an idea from all of you today for our first poll is, as you think about the youth sector in your coalition, your community, or your organization, which organizations that include youth does your coalition or organization collaborate with? I hope everyone can see the poll, yes? Can you guys see the poll? Can everyone see it? Okay, there we go. Yeah, okay. Okay, let's see what everyone put. Can everyone see the results there?
Yeah.
Yes. So yeah, youth serving organizations seems to be how a lot of you on the call today are accessing youth in your community. Schools, youth committee, a little bit less so on the faith-based youth groups. Okay. So moving on to just some of the ways in which we engage the youth sector and why they're just so important to our work in substance abuse prevention is that youth really provide a voice to their perspective around prevention. They can advocate on policies locally or on the state level. They can, host or participate in any events that you may be organizing in your community. We really like to see our youth assist in being a co-presenter or a lead presenter at community presentations that you might be having. Leading and hosting alternative events for other youth, maybe younger students in your community, creating social norms campaigns. And we know one area that youth is really helpful to all of us is leveraging our use of social media and technology. They seem to have a really great handle on that and have been super successful, I know, even in my own community in helping us use that. So with that, we're going to actually ask you another question of our second poll, which is which of these activities that we kind of just went through there does youth in your community participate in? I'll give you just a few seconds to kind of answer this poll question. I hope everyone can see it. Okay. And here are the results. So it looks like we have a lot of people who are providing youth in their community voice and perspective around prevention. And we're going to hear about a little bit more about that later on today through our speakers. Hosting events, creating social norms campaign, a little bit less on advocating on policy looks like. So yeah, that's where we are at with everyone there. So it gives you all an idea of areas of strengths and maybe some additional ideas and how you can work youth voice into your collaboration work. So just walking through some of the steps really quickly of the SPF. So as we know, the first step that we all engage in is the needs assessment. And that's really collecting data through various means to identify the priority substances in each of our communities and the associated risk factors that are associated with that, determine the evidence-based strategies that we think we would like to implement in our communities to prevent and reduce substance misuse. And we give you some ideas here on some of the various tools that exist in many locations, if not all of our communities, to access some of this data. So school discipline data, school climate reports, student surveys that you've done, parent surveys that you can do, focus groups and talking with different youth groups in your community, and the juvenile review board as well is also another area that you can access. So once we've looked at our data, we use that data to develop programs and activities that are planned to address the risk factors and strengthen our coalition work around substance misuse in the community. So capacity, I'm not going to read all of this to you. Again, we'll provide the slides to you because it's a lot of text, but just want to make sure we're giving everyone lots of ideas on capacity building. But really, you know, we know that youth just lend such invaluable insight into the day-to-day operations of community organizations and have so much insight on what's happening on the ground. So just some ideas on capacity building with the youth sector is provide meetings and event times where youth can participate in the coalition activities, seeking out youth input on policies of the coalition or bylaws if you have those. Evaluation is really a key area where I have found that youth can lend insight. So once you have a lot of data collection, kind of handing that over to them and gaining their thoughts on what they think about how the results look. School health curriculum reviews are another area where youth can provide feedback. They're also great at identifying any missing technology platforms or social media sources that you might be able to utilize in getting your messaging out. And also just carrying their messages forward to their parents, their siblings, their peers, what they're learning, what they're doing. And of course, I know that we're all super proud to elevate, you know, and recognize all of the youth efforts in our communities and making them feel that their efforts have been, you know, recognized in the community and shared throughout our community. So planning, this is where we're really going to look at those evidence-based strategies that we might want to utilize that have been proven to be effective in reducing substance use amongst youth and increase the awareness of our issues. Usually these are really, as we describe them, best fit. They address the substance and risk factors that are relevant to your particular community. And that can look differently and similar across each of our communities in Connecticut. Usually we've got the measurable goals and objectives that we're going to be working on, identifying the several strategies that we're going to use, engaging the youth sector and additional sectors, of course, in the planning phase is critically important so that we're collaborating across all of the different sectors in our community on the planning phase so we have consensus on what we're actually working towards. And again, just going back to that cultural competency with different populations, we wanted to make sure when we were talking about the youth sector that we provided some examples of some subgroup populations to make sure we're being very inclusive in reaching out to some of our LGBTQ youth groups, our persons of color, our athletes, our faith-based youth groups, special education students. So certainly not an exhaustive list, but just some ideas to make sure that we're reaching out to different youth groups within our community as well. And just providing a discussion point here for everyone. And if anyone wants to share, happy to let someone chime in if they'd like. But for your coalition or community, just a discussion topic can be how has youth development or youth assets guided your planning? And if anyone wants to share an idea on that, we can do that. I can't see everyone can, so you might have to help me out with that. But that's a discussion that we think is pretty important to have back within your organization or your coalition and how we're using youth assets and guiding our planning and what we're doing. Implementation, always my favorite part when I was a coordinator. That's when you're really out there in the community implementing all of your planning that you've done. Now it's a little bit harder, obviously, to be out there. I think we've all kind of pivoted to implementation in a different way since March, really. But just some ideas here for everyone on implementing is, you know, making sure we're alternating day, night, and weekend events so that we can have broad community attendance. And for youth, I always found it really helpful to make sure I was checking those school calendars, making sure we weren't conflicting with something that might be happening at school or any major youth events that might be occurring in the community. Ensuring all sectors and members are aware of what's going on and just using different various tools of communication. So email, social media. If you have a good relationship with your town bodies, you know, being able to access the town distribution list and just asking all of the different sectors to promote your events. Of course, we know it's important to keep track of our attendance and demographics for those of us that have to be doing some reporting. And then just really quickly, I wanted to provide an opportunity here for anyone who might want to share. You know, in the time of COVID, we've had to kind of switch in how we implement things a little bit differently. So I just wanted to know if anyone wanted to share an idea on what lessons can be learned and how the community responded in this time of COVID to support or protect our youth in the coalition and community. So just maybe if anyone wants to put in the chat box or just some ideas on how you've kind of pivoted in implementation. So again, Ken, I can't see anyone, or Shay, so if you guys can help me out with the chat box, if anyone's put anything in there, or if anyone else just wants to.
So Paige says that she has one.
Okay, does she want to unmute and share really quickly?
Hi.
Hi.
So I work for Youth and Family Services. I'm an intern there, and what we've done, it kind of encompasses your last question and this one, was that we actually designed programs because of COVID for our students, especially in the middle school, in that age range. We created a program called Chat and Chill, and they would come after school and we would chat with them about what's going on, whether it was COVID, what's going on with just our, community, or our world today, and then also give them like an activity to do that involves like intentional movement or grounding exercises. And it seemed to really help them out, and they really enjoyed it. It was fun, interactive, and I think we all benefited from it.
Yeah. Well, that's great. That's awesome. And so you found that the youth were really responded to that and signed up and wanted to participate?
Yeah, it was during sports season as well, which is always tough, but we had about, I would say 15 students in a pretty small town. And I would say it was definitely something successful, and the kids signed up for like 3 months worth of it, and they were there every single time. So I thought it was really successful.
Oh, that's great. Good job. Thanks so much for sharing.
Thank you.
Okay, just in the last phase is evaluation, where there's process data that ensures that we've kind of done what we said we were going to do and we implemented our programs with fidelity, and then the outcome data. And that really just helps identify if the selected strategies that we picked way back in our needs assessment and capacity building and planning phases contributed to the changes that we were looking to see change. Did we move the needle? Again, you're kind of going back to those youth data sources earlier on mentioned that you used in your needs assessment to see if you were able to make measurable difference in your outcomes that you were looking for in terms of your objectives and goals. And then in the evaluation process, once we have those results, it's always helpful to create a presentation that displays your change over time on those goals and strategies. And then also, being able to really champion ourselves, put out there where we had successes in our coalition and in our communities, and also being able to identify, where did we not move the needle or not as far as we had hoped, why that may have been, and kind of coming full circle back to that needs assessment phase. Sustainability and cultural competency. This slide is really just to provide you with a technical definition of those. On the next couple of slides, I'm going to go into them a little bit more in depth, but just wanted to provide that for you here on the slide. So cultural competency. So this is one of those principles that undergird the SPF model, where we're considering culture at each step. And we provide some ideas here for you on how youth can contribute to the role of cultural competency within your organization. So really, when you have all of that data that you're looking into and the information from your focus groups, really doing a deeper dive into that and looking for any hidden or underserved populations. Looking at your community from maybe 5-6 years ago when a lot of us received our grant funding, and have there been any demographic changes happening in your community, making sure we're keeping aware of that and reaching out to them. Holding focus groups, as mentioned before, with different student groups, reaching out to those clubs, those teen centers, athletes, youth leadership groups. And then are we making our materials available in multiple languages? So just some ideas there on how you may be able to build cultural competency into your prevention work with youth. One of the tools that we're going to provide for you at the end of this presentation is the opportunities to integrate cultural competency across the SPF chart. That's from SAMHSA, so that's one thing that you will get from us. And then the next, sustainability. So I know we're all kind of working on sustainability. It's never not happening in each of the phases. A lot of us are working on sustainability now for the long term, and that's really that long game, that long-term picture, our capacity to produce and maintain positive prevention outcomes over time. So some of the ideas that we provide for you here is just working towards some of our partners in our community, our schools, our town, our youth service bureaus, our organizations, our parks and rec, starting to own some of our prevention initiatives, identifying what training or technical assistance around sustainability you might need with. And of course, TTask is here every day to help you with that. What resources you might need to gather to sustain your efforts in your community. Of course, identifying sector champions to lead and generate enthusiasm is always a good idea. And then, of course, we're going to give you another tool like we did last time, which is how the SPF contributes to sustainability through each of the steps. So that's another tool that you'll be getting at the end of the presentation as well. So just going to quickly stop right here for a second and provide any opportunity that anyone might have, check in with Shay to ask any questions on the SPF part of our presentation before we get into our speakers.
So Margaret stated when we were going over a cultural competency that they attended a super LGBTQ 101 webinar yesterday where I became enlightened to the importance of including pronouns by our name in Zoom.
So this is Kathy. It's not Margaret Watt, it's Kathy Hazeland.
Okay.
Sorry, I have to change my name all the time. Yes, it was a super webinar, and I have to say it really is important for all of us when we're doing all these Zooms and virtual meetings, and this goes directly to cultural competency, that we do include those pronouns, because it really is important to do that and be sensitive to the LGBTQ community and others, quite frankly. So I just wanted to put a shout out for that. And sorry for the leaf blowing in the background.
Thanks, Kathy. Anything else, Shay, in there, or anyone else want to unmute and share anything on the SPF before we move on to our speakers? Okay, so next we're going to move into our shared experience, which is really the highlight of these presentations, is being able to hear from our fellow prevention coordinators and people who are doing this work with youth every day. So I'm just sharing this slide really quickly. We're going to have Terry Budlong speak first, and she's from Stand Together Danbury, then Dina Michinello from Durham, Kashi Shend from Vernon, Rocks coordinator. So each of them are going to kind of walk through some of this information on the slide and just share with each of us their experience in working with the youth sector. So Terry, you are up first. And
okay.
If you want me to share any of the slides that you sent last night, I'm happy to do that. You lead along.
Okay, thanks so much. Maybe at the end, you can just kind of run through those. That would be great. So it was about 3-4 years ago that I started a community teen prevention council. Today, we work very closely with our local prevention council on a community level, and we have clubs and club advisors now in 2 of the 4 high schools in Danbury. So the whole idea of a community-wide council was to bring students from all of the high schools together and collectively determine focus campaigns and focused activities that the members could then take back into their respective high schools, but it would have some semblance of coordination and collaboration. So Lisa had sent some questions, and I just thought I would kind of go through each question and give my input to them. How did we get started? Well, I've been working at MCCA in prevention in this position for a little over 8 years. And starting a youth council was always in my head. But what I wanted to mention here is that I have learned that when you set an intention and bring that intention forth with commitment, that's when things happen. So I went along my work with this idea in my head for about 4 years, and I would talk to people and I would build relationships in the community and the high school so that when I needed to draw on them, they would be there. But it wasn't until at a coalition meeting about 4 years ago when I said, I am starting a youth teen council, that things immediately took root. And the youth rep next to me looked at me and said, I will help you. And that's how we started. And for the first year, it was just Jess and myself. And then gradually things began to grow. So I mention that because I think sometimes we are involved with wishful thinking, or this thought or this dream, but when you bring it out into the open and confess it and make it intentional, that's when things happen. How were youth recruited? Well, we know timing's everything, but again, when you're committed and you don't waver, things happen. So I drew upon those relationships. The principal, we had started a freshman forum. I'd been involved with some of the other club advisors. So we could start to talk to them, and just being in one of the high schools could, meet with them one-on-one and actually say, who do you have that might be interested? Let me contact them. And that's how we began to recruit. And then we had our first community meeting, and a friend brought a friend, and it just kind of blossomed from there. In terms of structure, we have a president, a vice president, a secretary, and a social media coordinator. They meet once a week in the high schools with their club advisor, and we meet once a month on a community level. And that, I think, is really important because that's the only time that the students from the various schools can really come together and share and experience that, hey, we're going through the same stuff, only I'm over here. And it's a great time of sharing and input and brainstorming and ideas. So I think that's really been important. The president meets or attends our monthly coalition meetings and provides an update for the council. And the teen council secretary is also our secretary for our coalition. So we have at least 2 youth at every coalition meeting. And we do offer the secretary a stipend for her participation as a secretary in doing the minutes and sending things out. Some of the prevention projects we've done so far, there's been quite a few in the short time we've actually been at council. They have been very involved with our freshman forum. The first year we did not have a council that we did the freshman forum, so we utilized the officers, the freshman officers, to introduce speakers at our freshman forum. Not too long ago, the current president of our teen council reminded me that she was one of those freshman officers 4 years ago, and I did not remember that. So I thought that was pretty cool that things had kind of come full circle for her and she was still involved and committed. We involve the ROTC students as well as ushers. We've put together bands through the music department so music can be played while the parents and the students come in. And the team members assist in actually, setting up the event and manning tables at the event. This year, because of COVID, we are considering doing a virtual freshman forum. The principal has given us the okay, and we may play the recording from last year and just work it that way. We're not quite sure. We're just in the planning process for that. One of the first things that the one gal and I did the first year the council was constructed was what she labeled as a mental health day for freshmen. We worked with the department head of gym and health and got a day set aside during their mental health unit where kids came around and visited different rooms that we had set up to emphasize positive coping skills for ways in which to cope with stress. And so that particular year, we had a Zumba room, a therapy dog room, a yoga room, and got volunteers to fill the day so they actually could teach classes for the kids. This year we had to move all of that online, and the teens put together a fabulous PowerPoint that we sent to the health department at both the high schools and put on the school district website. And it gave videos and links and statistics and ideas and things they could do to promote positive mental health during the isolation of COVID. Speaking to 8th graders was also one of the priorities that the council came up with. The second year that we were a council and we had more members, I think by that time we had maybe 9, and they wanted to go into all 3 middle schools and talk to the 8th graders about their transition into high school to make it easier. And we got specific questions from all the principals and the superintendent, and the teens divvied those questions up, and we practiced answers and, kind of did a mock trial, and they went into the schools, and that was a highlight. They're still talking about that. And we had that in place last spring as well, but with COVID, again, what they did, they took all of those talks and they videotaped themselves, and we made a video and sent that out to the middle schools and also put it on the district website so that if kids wanted to, get some answers, what do I do? How do I dress? Where do I go? They would have that, because in the spring, we still didn't know whether or not we'd be involved in distant learning or back at school. So they had that. They were very active during like March, April, May, June, doing Netflix movie nights for the community, and Walk when that was really popular, writing positive messages and putting them all on Instagram. Recently, they've put together a recruitment video, which I sent you, Jen, so you've got that. Very short, very brief, but the social media gal did a great job with that. They've created an Instagram account, and the social media coordinator now handles most of our local coalition posts as well as the Instagram account for them. They've been very involved with our community forums and distribution of information. They were scheduled to be a really big part of our student survey data rollout to the community in the spring. And we had some kind of dramatic vignettes that they were going to be involved with, but that got postponed. They've been involved with current trends, presentations for the community, serving as greeters and signing people in, and just hanging around and answering questions that adults have. We've also involved them with our local Danbury Westerners baseball team, where one of the gals who was a softball player was able to throw the first pitch at a couple of the games and involve the council, and we had a display there. So they also recently, during Red Ribbon Week, presented the student survey results and announcements, morning announcements, which they're still doing through the schools. And they took it from the positive. So if 25% of the kids at Danbury High School, according to our student survey, had stated that they'd had a drink in the last 30 days, they would emphasize the fact that, hey, did you know 75% of us are not drinking? So they were really excited about that and thought that went really well. Right now, we're developing a bookmark that has a hole in the end, and we're tying a ribbon around that bookmark and attaching it to a mask that we had made up with their logo on it. And the bookmark itself on both sides has information regarding vaping. We wanted to really start getting information out because that's the focus of our funding for our local prevention coalition this year. So that was one thing that we could do fairly quickly. And now we just have to figure out how to get those masks into the hands of the kids, since we're still distance learning. But we are going to try to go through the health center at the high school and see, because we do have kids coming and going there, and just see if maybe we can get things distributed that way. In terms of support, I provide support to the council, as do the club advisors. They're very, very involved with the kids on a weekly basis. I do hold trainings for the teens at every community-wide council meeting. This past Wednesday, our college-age member of our coalition shared with the teens at our community meeting stress tips. She's actually a pre-med student, so she can relate, and did a great job. And the teens were so responsive because she's a young adult as well. She also is starting a mentoring program with our teen group and the Women's Medical Association at UConn, of which she's a part, and pairing teens and college kids up to mentor the teens, because they've been through the college application process. They've been through the high school at various different levels of involvement. So that was exciting. That all just kind of blossomed in the moments that she was sharing with the teens on stress. I've done some short trainings on leadership and management tools. One club advisor and myself did a yoga class, provided a yoga night for the students so that they could really practically apply some of the stress releasing coping skills. And last spring, I taped 5 different meditations and sent them out to everybody so that they could use them as they needed them during the beginning stages of being isolated with COVID. In terms of incentives, I invited the officers of the Teen Council to participate with me in the CADCA's Youth Leadership Training this summer in July. They absolutely loved it. They got so much out of it. We provide a scholarship for the Teen Council President, who also attends our coalition meetings. It's an annual monetary stipend, if you will, that we give to them for their participation. So if they're involved for 4 years, they get 4 years worth. If they're involved 1 year, they get 1 year's worth. In terms of benefits, really, I write college reference letters to them, and they know that. We give a substantial door prize at our annual Teen Council Recognition Ceremony, which we just had our first one last July. And obviously exposure to leadership opportunities. They really take the lead at a lot of our community events. Everything we do, I try to highlight them, because people appreciate that and they draw people. People want to see the good that teenagers are giving and involved, and their excitement level is through the roof. So try to really do that at everything. We've obviously had a lot of youth partnerships evolved. I think this mentorship program with UConn and our teen council is a great example of that. And I think the biggest lesson learned for me has been that youth reach youth. And youth involvement, as you mentioned, Jen, is imperative to effective prevention work. So just to summarize, they have been involved with the SPF process at all the different levels you described. Right now, we're involved in further assessing needs. They provided some great input when I did a focus group with them in June for our logic model that we were refining in terms of local conditions. Kids know where kids are using. So that's a fabulous way to engage them because they know. Right now, they're developing just a short survey relating to COVID. How has distance learning affected them? Are they using more substances? What are they using? We're just beginning. We've gotten approval to do that survey at the high school. Now we're just in the process of putting that together, but they're the lead. You know, we really want them to be the professionals when it comes to knowing what their peers' feelings and behaviors and attitudes are. So what else here?
Terry, I was wondering, there was a request if you could, Terry, can you hear me?
Yeah.
I was wondering if you wouldn't mind putting your email address maybe in the chat box at some point during today, just in case anyone has any follow-up or wants to reach out to all your awesome ideas.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for sharing.
You're welcome.
We'll allow everyone to ask some questions at the end of our speakers. Just want to make sure we keep on time track it. So Dina, hi, you're up next. If you want to share your experience, that would be great.
Thank you. You can hear me now, right? Perfect. Okay, so my name is Dina Missinello, and I am the prevention coordinator at Durham Middlefield Local Wellness Coalition. So I kind of came into an already formed youth group, so I was very thankful for that. But I started about a year ago, and so I've kind of been tasked on keeping the kids in there, the ones that we have, and keeping them involved and with what they already had started before I got here. So I'm going to also go through the questions that Lisa had sent briefly. So the beginning is how it started. It's a school club with different advisors in the school. And then most youth are recruited through their friends or other youth. I mean, we set up like official lunch tables and try to recruit people, but usually kids just want to come get the free stuff from those tables. So mostly the recruitment is done from their friends to come and join something that they are committed to. So our youth council is structured as EDGE. It's a club at the middle school and the high school. It's excellent decisions guiding every day. They meet once every other week, usually 2 or 3 times a month after school. Now we're able to do it on Zoom, which is awesome because we've gotten more kids even than before, and a lot of fully remote kids that are looking for that connection piece. So they don't go into school at all. And now they have that opportunity to come to an EDGE meeting that they never have before, which is great. Let's see. So, and we don't officially, like Terry was saying, have a secretary or someone that's in charge with the youth. We're kind of more laid back, just come together, meet, express what you're feeling, express what you want to do. And that's how we kind of keep people together. That was my biggest lesson, I guess I'll jump to that, is just to do things that the kids want to do. We give them we give them a starting off point, and then they can continue with what they want, which keeps kids around. So the next bigger question was what kind of projects that they have done. And Jen, when you did that poll of what different prevention things that our kids have involved in. I was so proud to be able to click all those different buttons. And before you said that, I was like, wow, do we really do all of that? But we do. So our kids teach younger kids about dating violence awareness, and then how substance use and different things can be involved in that. We have a youth-led vaping panel at the middle school. I'm not sure if this year we'll be able to do it, but our high school EDGE students, they go down to the middle school with Dr. Mike, one of our great coalition members, and he gives them kind of the adult talk about vaping and the doctor speak about vaping. And then the kids are allowed to ask any questions they want to the youth panel of high school kids. This summer, we have really been able to vamp up our PSAs. So one of the big PSAs that we did this summer was a RX drug awareness PSA, and that had been developed from the kids 2 years previously, I think. And then this year we were finally able to, since our interns were fully remote, the EDGE interns over the summer, they did video PSAs for us, and they really developed that from a youth lens, so it would influence their peers. And then on Friday's World Kindness Day, and every year something is done a little bit different, but we have, I don't have any with me right now, stick to kindness stickers that are somehow given out to students every year. And since we can't meet with them in person, we're only meeting over Zoom, my idea was that we would send letters to senior citizens in the town, but they were like, we don't want to do that. So it was another youth-led idea that they wanted to send personalized letters to the students that are all fully remote. So that was just another thing that was led by them. My idea didn't interest them, so they took it to another level that would interest them. And then I know not as many people clicked the box for the policy involvement. So before my time, the EDGE students, they influenced the policy at our local Durham fair. They had seen that vaping companies had big tents selling vaping devices right next to the children's area where everybody would go on the rides, and the kids didn't like that. They had bad feelings about it, even though they couldn't buy them. They were raffling away sneakers and had kids' toys and things to that. So they got together and influenced that policy at the fair, that they are no longer allowed to sell vaping products at the fair. So that was a great youth-led project.
Awesome.
So the next question was providing support for our youth group. So our youth groups are mostly run by the two advisors at the middle school and the high school. So we have a health teacher and then a school psychologist, and then I, the coordinator for the coalition, support them in what they have to do. And they also are a big piece of bringing kids in. Sometimes they're told they have to go to the club because of some sort of consequence, but most of the time it is that, oh, this would be a good opportunity for you, come join and get some community service or just meet some new people, which is great. So the next question was orientation and then different training for youth. Lisa or Terry, you said you had more structured trainings. We necessarily don't have specific trainings for the kids, but each meeting is kind of like a mini training on the prevention topic that we talk about. So we're giving them different information and stuff in that training. But then they're also invited to the full coalition meetings, and that normally is more of a formal thing. And then also, like Terry said, they had the opportunity to go to the CADCA training this summer, which was great since it was online. And to me, I almost liked it better online than in person because we were able to have so many different people go, which was great. So do our youth receive any incentives for participating? And what I wrote was food, food, food. So every meeting, yes, we have snacks or something to bring those kids in, something that they all like, something fun to eat is great. but then also the more like official incentives would be, it's a great resume builder to be a part of a club where your prevention activities are there. And if you are a member of EDGE, you are eligible to be one of our paid summer intern positions. And I think that's a great motivation for participating in EDGE. I was very surprised at how much they get paid to be involved in something that they truly enjoy as an internship in the summer. So that is good. And then I also wrote free giveaways are already always a plus. We have t-shirts and toys and blankets and just something that they have fun with. So they stick around and then help us through the prevention topics too. And then the last question I have that Lisa sent is then any lessons that I've learned. And I kind of geared it towards, in a COVID world, some lessons that I've learned is we really kind of scaled back what we do in each EDGE meeting because we found that kids are more interested in just having a spot to meet and don't think about school, don't think about this, let's not put too many pressures on them. So they just have a time to meet, but then we have a theme of prevention on top of it, which is nice. And I think that's all I have for now. I don't want to take up too much time. But yeah, they're great. And with their survey data, answers, and the little focus groups that we do, we're able to gear our bigger prevention work on what they decide they think would motivate them and their peers, which is awesome.
Well, thank you so much for that. There's some great ideas in there. I love how they're really leading your prevention efforts and providing their input into your focus.
Thank you.
You're doing in your community. Thanks so much for sharing. And then our last speaker today is going to be Cassie. Hi, Cassie.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I've been involved with the Vernon Rocks Coalition for about 3 years now. I actually started as the youth peer advocate for the coalition, and now I am the project director as our coalition has kind of grown, and now we have a partnership with Manchester as well. So I'll talk a little bit about that and being able to partner with youth from other towns, because unlike Terry, we have a pretty small group of kids in one town. We only have one high school, one middle school. So getting to connect with other local groups doing the same thing provides even more opportunity. But I'll start going through some of the questions that Lisa sent as well. So our group really got started when we wanted to rebrand, and it started as, you know, just really focus groups when we needed youth input on decisions we were making for the coalition, or trying to get youth involved in local community events that we were participating in. And as a result of starting our first social marketing campaign is kind of how our group really got started. We showed youth members previous campaigns, specifically substance use campaigns. We showed them, you know, what scare tactics look like and what positive messaging looks like and how protective factors could be used. And we really started there and got their input. From there, we got their input on what the name should be. And it was flip charts on every different possible name combination that could be coming up, and working on a logo. And through all of that really beginning phase work, they started to identify so much with the campaign that they created that they named themselves Real Talk, which is the name of our social marketing campaign. So that's how they really got started. Luckily, when that all started, a lot of our youth were underclassmen, mainly sophomores and juniors. So we were able to have them for a couple of years, and then unfortunately a lot of them graduated last year, but I'll get into a little bit more. Our youth coalition is structured that, you know, we try to provide different leadership opportunities as we offer different events or, you know, different things on social media. So rather than having a set structure, we kind of try to go with the idea that we know a lot of the kids that are involved in the group are also very involved in other groups or other sports teams or things like that in their community. And we want to make sure that we're giving everyone different opportunities for leadership. So, you know, sometimes we'll start working on a video project and one person might take the lead, or working on an Instagram post that they're really interested in and giving another person the opportunity to take the lead on that. So we kind of shift with who has a leadership role and, you know, what they're kind of doing, which also leads into how often we meet. Right now, we're meeting really regularly because we are working on a holiday campaign. So we're meeting weekly, but we also try to be flexible to what's going on with the youth members. Sometimes they get really stressed out if it's the end of a semester or it's exam time or something like that, and they let us know that they don't want to meet. Or another thing is if you don't have as much going on with them or don't have as much to work on, sometimes it's okay to scale back a little bit because it's more meaningful to get them engaged when there's a lot to do, instead of having a meeting, not really having too much to talk about, or, you know, they might question, is this worth my time? Whereas, you know, when we're really able to fill the meetings is when we meet a little bit more regularly. They do attend coalition meetings as well. So really we try to encourage our youth members, all of them, to engage with our coalition as much as possible, and really teach them to have that greater understanding of, you know, the relationship of the youth council and the coalition as a whole. And I think it really empowers a lot of our adult coalition members to see our youth present. It really shows them how much this means to the youth, that they're taking even more time to be present at these meetings. And then that also gives youth the opportunity to talk themselves at our coalition meetings about what they're doing, what they're working on, and the projects that they're really getting involved with. We have done a pretty big variety of prevention projects over the last couple of years, but one of the main things that we really target our efforts towards is social marketing campaigns. Actually, I can share my, Jen, do I have the option to share my screen? So I can.
Yes, Cassie, you can go ahead and share your screen if you want to, sure.
Okay. So I'll pull up a campaign that we actually rolled out over the summer. With COVID, we realized that it was still an opportunity to roll out a social marketing campaign because we can still get the message out there on social media, whether that be Facebook or Instagram. And there's other opportunities to still see it in the community. A lot of people were going for walks over the summer while the weather was beautiful, or, you know, a lot of us know that liquor sales were up because of COVID as well. So we took that as an opportunity to do a sticker shock campaign. So let me share my screen. So this photo is just one example of part of the campaign that we rolled out. So we had the substances as vaping, smoking, and drinking. We had it geared toward the youth, and we really made it a goal-driven campaign, getting at the idea that being involved in substances can affect the accomplishment of your goals. Our youth were really integral with this because, let me see if I can show you different ones. We created different messaging based off of different populations of youth. So the last one was academic driven, right? I want to go to UConn. This one was a little more athletic driven. This could affect your team. This could affect your season. This could affect the accomplishments you want to make as an athlete. We had another one that was a little bit more relaxed, of something you might just do with your friends. And, you know, a lot of our youth members were saying that they've lost friendships over vaping because their friends have gotten really drawn to vaping and they didn't want anything to do with it. So our youth were integral in helping us come up with these different populations to target because we wanted to make it relatable to everyone at the school. For example, we had one that was theater driven. Originally, this was actually a ballerina. And the youth came back and said, dancing isn't that big in our community. We don't feel like a lot of people would be able to relate to it, but a lot of kids are very involved in the drama program. So we changed the image to match what they experience. All of these images that I've shown so far have really been designed to be for Facebook, but we've also made sure that our images can be,
Cassie, I think we can only see the first one. You might have to stop screen share first. And then,
Okay.
yes, because I can only, I don't know about everyone else, so I can just see the Yukon one, but I definitely want to see the others.
oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Okay, let me go through some of the other ones then.
I think you have to put up and then put down, then put up,
Yeah.
that kind of a thing.
Okay, so
Or just one more.
yeah, so this was the this was a one geared towards athletics. We had this on a billboard as well. Why don't I smoke? The kids, it's really interesting when you engage them about these topics because they get down to the nitty gritty. Like they like that the white letters is behind a green background because it makes it pop and it's easy to see and it's an engaging message. So they really have a lot to say about this. And then I just wanted to show too that we also formatted the campaign differently for different social media platforms. So this one was meant for Instagram. Instagram has a little bit more of a square shape than Facebook. So, you know, we got our speech bubble in there in a different way, just to kind of, you know, make it engaging for each platform that it's on. So those are just a couple of examples of what we've done to engage them in the past and get their feedback on what the messaging looks like, from the image to the words we use. You know, I think we started with some wording that they told us was cringy, that nobody talked like that. People would think it was weird that we were putting out those kinds of messages. So we've gotten them to a place that they're very comfortable giving us that feedback. And now we're meeting more regularly because we're actually currently working on a billboard to talk about the holidays, make sure, you know, we're addressing underage drinking, but we're also going to throw some COVID messaging in there as well about making sure that they're staying safe, because they've told us that just with Halloween, people were gathering parties, and, you know, obviously we want to encourage safety all around with that. I see someone wrote in the chat box. So when we talk to them about creating a campaign, we kind of go to them with the idea of, we want to create some of this messaging. What do you guys think? We actually, for the last year or so, have been working with a marketing team. So, you know, someone that we contract out to, you know, help us with the design and the wording of everything. But perfect example was just last week, I had a youth meeting and our marketing guy came on and just, you know, really was asking them questions. So our youth members were saying, well, do you want to target youth or parents? And we turned it on them and said, what do you think? What do you think? Who needs to be impacted right now? And they said both. So we tried to talk about how we can reach both populations at once and how that messaging would work to really try to capture both audiences at the same time. But we really do put it on them. Some of the graphics that I was showing, we created into lawn signs, and we wanted it to be in areas of town that the youth would see it the most. So we asked them where they go, where are people hanging out, where are they going for walks? It was right before school started, so we put them around the schools, we put them in local parks, we put them, I think, outside the library, things like that, where we knew that there was high visibility that people would be walking past them very frequently. So even if you just, spend a little bit of money on a campaign, you can apply it in so many different ways, from posters to lawn signs to stickers to social media, and it really has a far lasting impact. So that's just one of the projects we've worked on, but for other projects, I really just encourage you to think about, is this something that I need to be doing, or is this something I can have the youth do? And a lot of the times they're capable and they can do it and they can bring a really great perspective to it. After we collected our last student survey, we held a vaping forum at the middle school around this time last year. And we had the students interpret the data. We made them responsible for different slides. And we had them talk about their own experience and what they saw for vaping in the high school. And that was really meaningful, but you're also giving them public speaking experience and teaching them to organize their thoughts and talk eloquently to parents and town leaders and, people that really care about what's going on. And then let me go back to the question. Sorry, I veered off topic a little bit.
That's okay.
For providing support to the youth, we do have a youth advocate who provides a lot of support, but I also continue to, supply support. We really just want to empower them as much as possible. So, if sometimes that means getting other people from town on board, depending on what we're doing, we try to see what kind of resources they need for the activities that they're working on. And in terms of training and orientation, we kind of tend to get youth in different waves. Sometimes we'll have, people trickle in mid-year or something like that, but it tends to be the beginning of a school year, the beginning of a calendar year, really when there's marked times for new opportunities. Youth tend to come on. We recruit a lot from a youth service bureau group that runs out of our high school. But we also promote the group on Instagram, and a lot of kids find us through that, or, sometimes they'll just say they heard of us and they're really interested and want to get involved. So when there's larger groups of new members, we get the existing members to tell them about the group, the types of things they've done, really try to lead it themselves, because they know what's helpful for new people to understand as they're coming in. But we also provide different trainings based off of, again, what they're doing. So we're fortunate that we were able to have a small group of youth go to DC with us last February, or this February actually, for CADCA, and we provided them support around the SPIF before we left, because we knew that CADCA trainings were going to be very heavy in the SPIF, and we wanted them to be familiar with the process. We've also, asked them to go out in the community and advocate and try to partner with different local organizations or restaurants. So we've given them trainings about how to sell the coalition, how to market the work you're doing, and how, it could look different talking to a peer versus a parent versus a pizza shop owner. Because, a lot of the times they're not familiar with that, and sometimes they get caught up in the very specific things that they're doing. So teaching them to talk about it on a larger level can sometimes be really important. In terms of incentives, we always provide them the opportunity to count their participation with us as community service hours. I write letters of rec for them for scholarships, college, things like that. Time and time, we'll sometimes offer incentive opportunities. Usually it's when we have a heavy amount of work that we feel like it's asking a little bit more than just membership for, the group, or it's going to take a little bit more time. And that's when we tend to offer stipends and things like that. And in the past, we have created opportunities for them to partner with other subcommittees with our adult coalition. You know, they've been involved with conversations around evaluation, you know, rolling out the surveys in the schools. The last time we surveyed in the school, we had a local police officer and one of the student members kind of act out a skit regarding things like, if I tell you this, aren't I gonna get in trouble? And, you know, he would reply and say like, no, nobody can identify that you told me this and it's not gonna get traced back to you. And, you know, typical concerns that students might have when doing a survey. And we were able to get really high participation, partly because of that video. And finally, lessons learned. I think that, like Terry said, youth certainly reach youth, but also I think youth really can empower the community. You know, we've had our youth talk to the Board of Ed and Town Council and be featured in news articles and things like that. And, you know, it's really empowering to see how much work such young people in our community are capable of, and, you know, what ideas they have and how committed they are to trying to grow their community into a bigger place. So, you know, don't be afraid to give them the power to, you know, have them take the lead on events or talking in public, because you can be really, really surprised at what they come up with.
Thanks so much, Cassie. That was awesome. I appreciate it. If anyone has any questions for Terry or Cassie, Adina at this time, or if there's anything in the chat box, Jay, that you think we need to go over, happy to have anyone unmute for a couple of questions before we just want to keep track of the time, go on to the next part. But does anyone have any questions at this time?
There are no questions currently in the chat box. If you guys want to post Terry, Dina, and Cassie your guys' websites or social media outlets, that'd be awesome. You can post that to the chat box.
I do have a quick question for the three presenters real quick. Just curious as to when does your coalition meet? When you're including your youth members in your coalition, what time of day does your coalition meet? Thank you.
Our coalition meets every Monday, the first Monday of every month at 6 p.m. And we usually go 7:30.
And then our full coalition meetings are usually right after school, so around 2:30. So the kids don't go home; they just either come to our coalition meeting, and then also our youth meetings are right after school as well. We've had to change the Zoom meetings this year because we found that kids aren't staying at school for the meetings, and they wouldn't be home in time for that 2:30 time frame, so we've shifted that to be a little later.
Yeah, our coalition also meets at 2:15 the third Wednesday of every month. We made that really intentional for the youth to be able to join the coalition meetings because, similar to Dina, it was right after school. Our coalition meetings were at the school, so it was really easy for them to stay, grab the coalition meeting, and then most of the time they still had the opportunity to go catch, you know, another club or another team sport or something like that. You know, we do recognize that that means a lot of parents aren't able to come at that time, but we try to engage parents in other ways. And for the youth meetings, the time really varies, honestly, season to season based off of what the kids are available to do. So if we know that there's youth members that are involved in sports, we'll put out another poll or another survey to see what time works best for everyone, and we'll try to accommodate as many youth as possible.
Okay. All right. Thanks so much to our speakers, and we'll be sure to follow up with everyone when we send out the slide deck, just their names and emails, if that's okay with everyone. So if you have any further questions or want to pick their brains anymore, you'll have the ability to reach to them indirectly. All right, moving on to the next part of our presentation, we're going to start talking a little bit about levels of engagement. I'll probably just go through this pretty quickly just so we can get it done on time. But this also comes from SAMHSA's guide for the SPF model. And I'm not going to read all of this text to you. You can feel free to read that on your own when you have time. But really, we're talking about 5 different levels of sector involvement in our work that we do. So one is the lowest would be no involvement, when stakeholders or different groups just really aren't communicating or working together at all. Networking is where you might be talking about some issues that might be common amongst different stakeholders, but not really going beyond information sharing or discussing things. Cooperation is when we might, support another organization's activities or write letters in support of them. So really starting to build a little bit more of support for each other where things cross in terms of shared goals or objectives. Then coordination is when we're really starting to work together and serve together on planning committees or community boards, starting to implement programs and services together. And collaboration is where you really are working with different stakeholders or organizations within your community. There might be some formal agreements, there might not be, but sometimes there are, like MOUs or contracts, but they really are working together on fundraising efforts. They're pulling their fiscal resources, they're pulling human resources, and they're working together on a comprehensive plan based on shared goals, shared missions, shared outcomes that they're working on. So they really overlapping their efforts to address a community need. And in this instance, it would be on youth substance prevention efforts. So as we kind of look at these 5 different levels and you think about youth in your organization or your coalition, we're going to throw up our next poll. And if you had to put youth sector in one of these categories and how you're engaging with youth, or the level of involvement, we're going to let everyone pick one up. Can you guys all see that poll, I hope? If you could put your level of involvement on the youth sector in your organization or coalition where you think they sit. Okay. So it looks like, I hope everyone can see the results, but it looks like most are really feeling like they're really collaborating with youth. Kind of even distribution a little bit, not a lot of networking going on, so no involvement. So there are some opportunities out there, and we hope that today's session has helped give some ideas on how to do that, but we're going to get into a little bit more now on how to actually engage the sector. So hopefully we'll give you some ideas on how to do that. So first we're going to talk about some common barriers to engagement that sometimes cross across the different sectors, the 12 different sectors, but some things that we identified as common areas are competition or turf issues. Maybe there's a challenged history between organizations, just availability of youth members to actively participate, those scheduling issues to overcome, dominance by adults in the coalition, poor links, how to access youth, minimal organizational capacity. So just having the people to try to do the recruitment and the retention and reaching out, that communication piece, funding, recruiting and sustaining youth participation over time. So jumping just to the next poll, we wanted to hear from some of you guys on what you felt or you've experienced in your organization or coalition as to what are some of the barriers you might have experienced in your own work to working with some youth. Okay, so here are our results. Looks like youth availability to participate came in the highest there as one of our barriers, and minimal capacity to recruit or sustain youth engagement. Does anyone on the call or on today's session want to maybe unmute and share what some of the challenges might be around availability to participate, or any of these areas actually, if they want to really quickly with the group, so we can maybe brainstorm some ideas together? Put something in the chat box, whoever answered those questions. I can't see anywhere everyone can, so.
I can. One that I've often heard from different coalition coordinators is the lack of response from people like either at the high school or perhaps a youth service bureau organization. I've heard that a couple of times, who just aren't into collaborating or into, you know, working with you. So you reach out, but you don't necessarily get a response. So that's one that I've heard.
I know in my experience too as well, scheduling when, you know, there's maybe involved in so many things and just finding that common time, or just, you know, between the coalition and the youth, finding that time to participate as well, as something that I know I've experienced as well, as a barrier sometimes. So now we're going to share some ideas on how to overcome barriers that we hope will be helpful. There's a lot on this slide, I know, so I won't read all of this to you, but just we kind of separated engagement with the youth sector into two buckets here. So those who are struggling to engage with the youth sector or just starting out and trying to reach the youth sector, some ideas on there on how to just start off. And I know you've heard from some of our speakers, some ideas on how to get going with that. And the other bucket is really just different, if you're already working with youth, how to further increase that level of involvement. So I think that we've talked about things like recruitment, flyers and interest forms, making sure we're reaching out to all of those different subgroup population ideas that we've talked about today, making sure that they're getting the communications through various means, whether that be emails, school, parents, PTAs, all of that, where you can get information out to different sectors in terms of recruiting youth, really lending their voice and letting them participate in leading events. As we've heard from our speakers today, has been such an awesome opportunity for youth in their work in prevention. Letting youth work with younger youth is another area that we've heard from today. So that's also really been powerful in some of our coalitions. So just a bunch of ideas here for you. As we look at this, and for some of you that may have on the previous poll identified some barriers in engaging youth or recruiting youth, as you look at some of these ideas on here, we're going to ask if you could think about just one or two ideas on here that you're not doing that maybe you think you might be able to do after today in terms of being able to reach out and engage this sector, either just from a starting point or from increasing that level of involvement that you have in your organization or coalition. So the next one, our last poll for today, is increasing youth engagement. So hopefully you've seen an idea or heard an idea today, if you want to answer this, that you might be able to do after today in terms of engaging youth. Okay. All right, so everyone can see the results. It seems like many people on today's call feel like they could use youth mentors more. That's great. And we heard some ideas about how to do that, getting them into the middle schools, having them do alternative events with younger people, creating those PSA messages. So using those youth members that already exist out there in your community, perhaps. And then looks like doing some more focus groups. Yep, doing that and just making sure we're aware of those calendars. So great. We have some good ideas on that. So that is kind of the end of that piece. So we are going to just go on to some, Before we shut down for today and end our event, we wanted to just make you aware, in case you weren't aware, in Connecticut, of our partners, the RBHAOs, our Regional Behavioral Health Action Organizations. Connecticut's divided into 5 different regions, so to speak, with each with their own RBHAO. And they have also additional resources on prevention activities, prevention resources, and information for each of the areas in which you are located. We provided here on this slide for you just their logo, and you can click on the logo and it will take you right to their websites, or we actually provide the website if you prefer. So any one of these 5 RBHOs is another resource for you to get further information on substance use prevention and opportunities that are there. Next, we are providing you with this levels of collaboration scale. So we thought this might be a good tool for you to use in your work, either at a leadership meeting or a full coalition meeting, just to kind of assess the people that you work with, where they feel the youth sector sits in your organization, and so to be able to have a conversation and how you might be able to increase engagement, overcome some barriers, and further build that youth voice and engagement into your work in prevention. The next tool that we are delivering is what we promised earlier. Is just an appendix here on the opportunities to integrate cultural competency across the SPF steps. So this provides for you a number of ideas in each step of the SPF on how you can additionally increase your cultural competence across each of those steps. The next one is helping to build how the SPF helps us contribute to sustainability. So again, in each step that we went over earlier in today's session, how we build sustainability throughout our SPF model, and looking for those long-term outcomes and being able to maintain what we're doing in each of our communities. Last but not least, TSASC is engaged in creating a tool for all of our organizations and coalitions throughout Connecticut, and really anyone in our country or elsewhere. For each sector, we are building out an idea chart across some of our more common evidence-based strategies that we see used in communities today in youth prevention. So youth engagement, enforcement activities, working with our law enforcement, social norms campaigns, and coalition capacity building. So this is going to be a living document, and we look forward to putting some of your ideas in here and hearing from you if you on additional ideas that we can do. But this is something that will also be on our website. So a whole lot of ideas across sectors. But these are just some of the ideas that we're putting in for the youth sector for today. Ooh, sorry. And then finally, just some final notes for you all is how to access the tools on the TTASC website. So we're providing you preventiontrainingcenter.org is our website. There's a feedback link right here, a Survey Monkey, that we hope everyone on the call will take today, because this is only our second one. We've got 10 more to go, and would really appreciate everyone's feedback on how you thought today went, how we can improve upon it and make it better. So we will, it's available here, but also Shay, I'm sure we'll put it in the chat box for us as well. But we will also be emailing everyone today with the slide deck, and we'll be sure to include this link for you so you can take that when you have some time. The next sector is going to be the business sector, which we are really looking forward to, kind of switching gears a little bit from schools and youth right on over to business, and how our coalitions are collaborating with the business sector in their communities on prevention work. That will be early in December, so we will be sure to email everyone out an invitation to that to register when that registration link is up. And finally, I've provided for you here a YouTube link to our first one on the school sector that we had in October. So if anyone missed that, you will be easily able to access that and watch that on your own time. And finally, just my email for any follow-up questions or feedback that you might have. And Ken, did you have a couple other save the dates that you wanted to talk to?
Yes, just 2 save the dates. The first one being this Friday, November 13th, from 12 to 1:30. We have Dr. Jason Kilmer, who is a professor at University of Washington, will be doing a lunch and learn via Zoom entitled Putting a Spotlight on Hidden Treasures in Science, Exploring Studies with Implications for Alcohol and Other Drugs Prevention Interventions. So be sure to sign up for that. If you haven't already, you can go to our website, which I believe there's a link to it in the chat box, and you can register there. The second save the date will be for December 15th from 9:30 a.m. to 11 a.m. And this is going to be a direct to consumer alcohol presentation. And stay tuned for a flyer. It's in the works, and it will be coming from the Governor's Prevention Partnership. So check the Clearinghouse listserv for that. And that's it. Thank you.
Okay, go ahead, Lisa. Yeah.
We have two national speakers coming in to talk at the Alcohol Direct-to-Consumer Marketing, and it's a collaboration between us and Governor's Prevention Partnership. So we hope you are willing to attend that topic. It's basically about home delivery of alcohol and how that increases the COVID regulations allowed home delivery or curbside pickup of alcohol, and is that increasing access to young people, and what can we do around that to keep kids safe? So that's what that is about, December 15th. A couple of things that I wanted to bring up. One of the things that I've seen some folks do successfully when they've had difficulty getting a youth group off the ground is make a partnership with another organization in the community that has an active youth group and borrow theirs for work. The second point is, I think you heard the energy from our three speakers, and I have found this too, that when I work with youth, it gives me energy, and it can be positive peer pressure on the adults as well when they see the great thing the young people are doing. And the final point is, if you go on our website, our current website, we're in the process of updating it. We have something called a job description for a youth peer advocate. Anyone who was funded with Partnership for Success money, which has ended from Demas. Cassie was one of those groups. Sheridan is another from Manchester. They had to hire either a high school, college student, or young adult and pay them. And so we have a description, a job description on our website. You have to create an account and go, and you will come to a page that says modules, videos, or tools. Go to tools, and you'll see a sample job description for a youth peer advocate. And I bring it up in case you wanted to engage a youth peer advocate in your program, or there may be some items on that you could use for recruiting youth flyer. You know, if you wanted to expand or recruit youth, there may be some like tasks or responsibilities or incentives that you may want to add to a flyer you're creating. And that's it.
Okay. Well, everyone, it's just about that time, 10:30, and I hear someone's got some radio going on there. So thank you all so much for coming. A super big thank you to our speakers today for sharing all their ideas and experiences with us. And have a great day, and we hope to see you next month for the business sector. Thanks so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, speakers.
Yes, thank you.